He let his father move into the basement, then this happened. The night Evan realized the agreement had already been broken, his father was rocking Evan's daughter to sleep in the dark, whispering rules that weren't his to make. "You don't have to tell Mommy everything," Richard murmured, not noticing Evan frozen halfway down the basement stairs. Evan didn't interrupt. He stood there, hand on the rail, feeling the strange inversion of power that had been creeping in for months. The basement. Once a cluttered storage cave, now had drywall, a kitchenette, and a door that locked from the inside. It seemed practical. Temporary. Humane. Richard's early retirement had collapsed quietly. Restructuring, he'd said, then later admitted the pension wasn't what he thought. Evan and Lila had 2 kids under 5, and daycare costs were chewing through their savings. The deal felt elegant. Richard would live downstairs, help with childcare, and pay a modest amount toward utilities. No rent. Family helping family. At first, it worked. Richard cooked stews that smelled like Evan's childhood. He walked the kids to the park and fixed leaky faucets without being asked. Lila praised him to friends. "We're lucky, honestly." But lines blurred fast. Richard corrected Lila's parenting in front of the kids. He rearranged the kitchen, for efficiency. He referred to the basement as, "my unit," then later as, "my place." One night at dinner, Richard mentioned he'd changed his mailing address. "It's just easier," he said, shrugging. "Doctors, banks. Keeps things clean." Lila's fork paused midair. "You used our address?" "Well, I live here." The word live hung heavier than stay ever had. Later, in bed, Lila whispered, "This isn't what we agreed to." Evan wanted to argue. "I wanted to say it was still working, mostly." But he remembered his father's voice downstairs, soft and proprietary, shaping his daughter's world in a tone Evan hadn't authorized. Down below, a floorboard creaked. A door clicked shut. And Evan realized the basement wasn't just finished anymore, it was claimed. Evan tells himself it's just discomfort, not danger. But the next call comes from his sister, and she sounds furious. "Do you know how this looks?" Marissa demanded over FaceTime, her voice sharp enough to wake Evan's kids through the screen. Evan stepped into the garage, closing the door. "Looks like what?" "Like you're bleeding Dad dry," she snapped. "Housing him in exchange for free labor. That's not helping. That's exploitation." Evan laughed once, incredulous. He offered. "That's what people say when they're desperate." Marissa had always been like this, decisive, moral, certain she saw the truth faster than everyone else. Growing up, she'd left early, moved to Chicago, married Tom, and built a clean life. Evan stayed close to home. Close to their parents. Close to responsibility. "You're not here," Evan said. "You don't see how much he helps." "I see his bank statements," she replied. "Or what's left of them." That was new. "Why are you seeing his bank statements?" "Because he asked me to help him figure out why his credit score dropped 40 points. Evan felt a chill. "Dropped how?" Marissa exhaled. "Because he listed your house as his primary residence. Because he's using it to shield assets from creditors." Evan said nothing. Tom appeared briefly behind Marissa, arms crossed. "You need to talk to a lawyer," he said. "Before Dad decides he owns part of your place." That night, Evan confronted Richard gently. Too gently. "You didn't tell me about the debts," Evan said. Richard didn't look surprised. "You didn't ask." Lila listened from the doorway, arms folded. "Did you list the house for protection?" Richard sighed, like a man disappointed in children. "I did what I had to do." "For you," Lila said. "Not for us." Richard's voice hardened. "I raised you with nothing. This house exists because you had a stable childhood." Evan flinched. The old ledger was open now. Upstairs, a notification buzzed on Lila's phone. A letter preview from the county assessor. Property tax reassessment notice. The number at the top was higher than anything Evan had imagined. Evan thinks the damage is emotional, until he reads the fine print and realizes the house is no longer just theirs. The reassessment letter wasn't dramatic. No threats. No accusations. Just a clinical acknowledgement that the property now qualifies as a multi-unit residence with an additional adult occupant claiming domicile. Which meant higher taxes. Backdated. Evan sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the calculator app glowing, the number climbing with each tap. Lila watched him silently, her face tight. "This is real money," she said finally. "College money." Evan nodded. "I know." When they brought it to Richard, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize either. "You didn't say I couldn't," he said. "And it protected all of us." "All of us?" Lila asked. "If creditors come after me," Richard said calmly, "they won't touch the house. It's family property now." Evan stared. "Now?" Richard met his gaze. "I've invested in sweat equity. Time. Childcare. That counts." Something in Evan cracked, not loudly, but completely. He thought of his teenage years, working nights while Marissa studied. Of his father's silence after Mom died. Of promises made and never revisited. Marissa flew in that weekend. The confrontation was volcanic. "You manipulated him," she told Richard. "You always do." Richard laughed bitterly. "You left. You don't get to judge." Tom tried to mediate. Lila's mother, Denise, arrived uninvited, horrified by the tension. The kids hid upstairs, listening. Richard dropped the bomb during dinner. "I want my name on the house," he said. "Or I move out. And take what I'm owed." The room went quiet. Evan realized then that this had never been temporary for his father. It was a reclamation. Evan must choose between legal war and emotional collapse, but Lila decides on her own before he can. Lila packed the kids overnight. Evan woke to suitcases by the door and a note on the counter. "I can't raise them in a house where trust is negotiable." Panic cut through him sharper than anger ever had. At Lila's mother's place, Evan listened as Lila laid it out. "Your father doesn't see us as hosts," she said. "He sees us as assets." Evan wanted to defend Richard. Habit. Reflex. But the word assets rang true. Back home, Richard acted wounded. "She's tearing this family apart." "No," Evan said quietly. "You did." The lawyer Evan hired was blunt. Richard had no automatic claim, but the longer it dragged on, the messier it would get. Mediation. Buyout. Or eviction. Evan sat alone in the basement that night, surrounded by the false independence they'd built. He saw it clearly now, the kitchenette wasn't kind. It was leverage. He called Marissa. "You were right," he said. She didn't gloat. "So what are you going to do?" Evan looked around. "End it." Evan makes his offer, but Richard responds with a final, devastating truth. Evan's proposal was clean. He'd help Richard relocate. Pay off part of the debt. No ownership. No basement. Richard listened, expression unreadable. Then he spoke. "Your mother would have wanted this house shared." Evan stiffened. "Don't. She knew you'd forget who built you." Evan slammed his hand on the counter. "You didn't build me by taking from me now." Richard's voice dropped. "I put the house up as collateral months ago." Silence. "You what?" "If I lose it," Richard said, "we all do." That was the climax, the moment the truth fully surfaced. This wasn't about pride. It was about control through collapse. Evan called the bank the next morning. The final decision will save the house, but cost Evan his father. Richard left within a month. No ceremony. No forgiveness. The lien was resolved. The taxes stabilized. The basement door stayed locked, but empty. Months later, Evan watched his kids play where the kitchenette once stood, drywall half removed. Lila leaned against him. Was it worth it? She asked. Evan thought of shared ownership. Shared blood. Shared silence. Yes, he said. Because stability isn't shared when it's forced. The agreement was gone. The boundary remained.